What's going on, Archons? Welcome to another KeyThoughts episode. Decided to switch it up and go back into the old KeyForge jamming room where I stream, etc. I don't want you to get too comfortable with where I'm shooting these. No, I just wanted to do it in here today just for funsies. And fun announcement to kick things off. I've decided that with all these decks I'm opening and all these basic boxes of KeyForge decks I have in my possession right now that I've been able to acquire through some goodwill and also good deal finding. I have a lot of different decks to open, which I love to do on the channel. It's a lot of fun. I love that process. I'm gaining a lot of experience, not just from opening the decks, but also playing them at least once on TCO during stream. And I found doing that, playing all the decks that I open, and that's kind of why I went to this whole play all the decks in my collection, has really developed me as a player. I see things differently. It's obviously great to spend time with one deck and really get to know it and pull out all the tricks and discover all the treasures that are in a deck. But I also find that variety is the spice of life, at least for me. And with that in mind, I am starting to realize that I'm going to run out of space for all these decks I'm opening. So what I want to start doing is, if you are a Patreon supporter, you will be able to get some of these decks that I'm opening. So what I want to start doing is, anyone who's a Patreon supporter at the $5 level is going to basically be entered into a draw each month for a deck. So how this is going to work is, for each $5 level you're at, if you go 5, you get 1 entry. If you go 10, you get 2 entries, etc., etc. This is how we're going to kick this off, see how it goes. And I wanted to just make this so that when I'm opening decks, you'll have the opportunity to get some yourself. And I'm thinking I'm going to do this twice a month to start with. It won't be a one-time a month thing. It is definitely going to be twice a month. And how that will work is, at the end of the month, anyone who's a Patreon supporter in that regards will be entered into the following month. But for this first month, I just hit a milestone on this YouTube channel, and that is I hit 300 subs, which is the, I guess, I don't know if that's the greatest milestone to start with, but it's a milestone that just got hit. So we're going to use that. And because I appreciate everyone supporting me on this channel, I would actually like to start this off by doing a giveaway of the deck I'm going to open in a subsequent video coming this week to one of you who have been supporting me on here. So yeah, stay tuned for that and find out which deck it could be. There's a lot of different ways I'm going to go about doing these deck openings. Sometimes I may be giving away more than 2 decks a month. So if you are a Patreon subscriber at the $5 and up level, you will be automatically entered in the subsequent months. But for this month, everyone who's on my YouTube and subscribing is in the pool. And the one thing I will say, though, is the one asterisk next to all this: if you won during the month, your name will be taken out of the pool for the second draw. So you can't win twice in a month, basically, is what I'm getting at here. Just make it fair for everyone. But enough of that fun news. Let's get on to the show, which is my thoughts on KeyForge for this week. First off, let's kick things off with the card of the week. And we have Vault's Blessing. So, do you know this card, Vault's Blessing? Is this something you're familiar with? For me, this has actually become one of my absolute favorite cards in Mass Mutation. I love it. And for those who are not familiar, it gives you an Ember Pimp. It's from House Untamed, and it says, play, it's an action. Each player gains 1 Ember for each mutant creature they control. I just find I love it. I've noticed that in Mass Mutation, I'm really kind of embracing the mutant-themed decks. Those are the decks I want to play. I have the most fun playing them, probably because I love Dav. I do seem to be really drawn to the artifacts that exist within the game. Sans Heart of the Forest. Hate that card. Will not, legit refuse to play against it. I think if I was in a tournament and someone played that, I may even just concede. or just make sure I always have artifact removal, so it's never a thing for me. One of the two. But that aside, and my salt for that card, I just love the artifacts that exist in this game that do really neat things to change the game in a not too unfair way. I know some people have a bad taste for Quixelstone. I love it though. I think it creates such an interesting proposition on both sides of the board, even for yourself or for your opponent. So I just love that, and Dav is definitely maybe my most favorite artifact, but it's such a finicky one for finding the right composition to make it work. I've been blessed to come across a couple that were affordable, as well as open a beast myself, which has been moving around now. So that's the card of the day, and now let's get on to the topic that I want to talk about this week. And I've actually had this idea in my head for a very, very long time. And I've just been waiting and waiting because I wanted to talk about it at the most appropriate time. And with recent news, it's even more appropriate to talk about this right now. So, that being said, I wanted to talk about Dark Tidings, but not just Dark Tidings, how I am going to be consuming Dark Tidings when the set releases in the next few weeks with all the delays and whatnot. So, what I would like to do for Dark Tidings is, because we can't scan the decks and they will not be playable on TCO, who knows if even TCO will be up and running with Dark Tidings right away. But what I would like to do, and then not to mention you have the Master Vault issue right now that's currently being worked on, is you're going to basically have these decks that you can open and play, but you may not have anything to play with. And beyond that, even without the TCO side of things, I wanted to kind of do an experiment where I open my Dark Tiding decks, and ones that I think are good. So there's obviously going to be a little disparity here in some way. I want to actually test them through my own Gauntlet playing against myself. And obviously this is not an original idea. The Gauntlet is not something new. The gents at Tabletop Royale, I think, I would say, they haven't trademarked this, but when you think of a Gauntlet, you think of them. And I respect them for that. And I did reach out to Nathan to actually ask for some tips on how to create a Gauntlet. And I'm going to be doing that. And the best way to create a Gauntlet, if you want to try this exercise yourself with your Dark Tiding decks, or any deck for that matter, is you look at deck archetypes. It's not necessarily based on your best decks you play deck against it. It's actually, you do it through archetypes. And the reason you do that is you're trying to glean information of how will this deck work against a certain matchup. Is it going to be folding under rush? Is it going to be folding under like that burst thing that happens? Lack of scaling Ember Control is an issue? How does it work against big board decks, combo decks, control decks, like all those different things, like artifact decks? You just find the archetypes that exist that you feel are important to you in your matchups, and you create a series of decks that you feel represent these, and then you run the deck through it. And the idea is to see how it performs against these. It's not like it's basically saying where the strengths and weaknesses are. It's not this deck is trash necessarily. It's more, where does it excel? Where does it fall short? And you're going to start finding out different information about the deck and how it works. I mentioned that sometimes you're looking for things that are really good in best of 3 scenarios. You're trying to find that information as well, and there's different ways you can go about this. But you just run it through a series of decks. Maybe not bad decks, but that's how you can do it to find that information. The other idea I had for a Gauntlet before I reached out to Nathan was the idea of creating a Gauntlet where you have power levels of your own decks and you kind of work through them. So you have one that is a solid deck, but maybe it's a lower SAS, but like this deck can do things on any given day. It's not like something you'd maybe bring to a Vault Tour, but it can hold its own in situations, and you kind of go then a level up from there, and then you kind of work your way up to maybe your best deck and see how the deck, like at what point does the deck fail. That's another idea I had, was you go for your own power level with decks and have the idea like you really know how to pilot this deck versus your new deck, and kind of just see how it stacks up in that way. So I think those are 2 ways you can approach a Gauntlet, which I think are really fascinating for me. I don't know which way I'm going to go with. I'm going to test them both out. I currently have a deck that I opened and I played on stream that I've been using in a Gauntlet. So I opened it, I identified that it had a very strong possibility. Like, it looks like if I scanned it into DOK, it would be very strong. And this made me also want to use this as a first test run and try these 2 different ways. And I actually want to go about this deck is seeing if I can figure out what the SAS will be based on how it matches up against other SAS. I just wanted to see how it works. And so I'm trying my own Gauntlet with the deck I open. I've not put into DOK, I'm not going to. And I just want to see what happens when I play it against my decks that I find are really good and see how it stacks up in that way. And I'm just really curious to try out this way of playing IRL with myself, basically. That's what it is. And you can do this in TCO as well for really fast, efficient testing, as you essentially have two browsers open and you're both players. Shout out to my man Joe, X073D. You may know him from ABR. But Joe's a good guy, and he said that he's tested using TCO that way. I don't think I'm going to do that right now, even though that is probably the most efficient way. I'm missing holding cards and playing that way, so I don't mind setting up a table and having an opponent on either side, which is just me, and playing both hands that way and just seeing what happens and how the deck plays and functions, because I really miss playing IRL right now. I'm starting to really miss it. One thing I'm blessed to be able to do is I have one friend who does not play in my local scene, but we do play KeyForge when we hang out. Is I'm going to definitely crack some Dark Tidings decks with him and jam some games, and I know we're going to do some in the way where I just literally crack the deck, don't even look at the Archon, look at nothing, you know the houses, and you just shuffle up and then find out what the deck has by playing the cards. And I'm really looking forward to that experience. I'm really looking forward to this experience with Dark Tidings. I have gone in blind to this set. My first time, this is probably opening Coda, that I didn't know things about it until I was playing. And because we're not playing tournaments here and I have no need to know everything right away, I'm really looking forward to this new level of discovery. I know Scuzzy is doing the same thing. And I gotta say, like, my excitement and anticipation right now is at an all-time high. The only thing I'm really aware of Dark Tidings is the art, and there's a Tide mechanic and Evil Twins. That's literally all I know. I've seen a few art pictures, never read any text to know what the cards do. So I'm really excited for this discovery that's coming my way in the next few weeks. Let me know your thoughts on a Gauntlet. Have you done anything like this? And do you like this idea of the Patreon supporters getting some decks from me, and I will pay the cost of shipping, provided you don't live somewhere where it costs like $30 to send you a deck. That may be the one caveat to this, but we'll see how things go. I just really want to not have a bunch of decks, and I appreciate everyone who comments and responds to these videos, and I want to share the wealth. And if you support what I do in creating content for the community, I also want to give back in a way. So we're going to start off with twice a month. It may go up from there, to be very honest. I may start giving away way more decks if this starts gaining traction and we get enough Patreon supporters. I'll definitely do that, because one of the main reasons is the cost of shipping. Having to eat that every month. If there's enough support through Patreon, then we can fold that into being a lot of decks being given away. So thank you everyone for supporting me. A lot of you have reached out and told me how much you appreciate the content I do, and has helped create an invigorated love for the game. And that just makes me really happy, because I do this because I do love this game, and I want to share my thoughts in many ways as I can, streaming, doing these YouTube videos, and then of course the Hell from Future Self podcast, which really started this whole journey for me. And I'm really excited of where we're at within the game, where I'm at within the game, and the future. So thank you all so much. And as always, may your ember never be stolen and your keys forged promptly. Have a good one.